Hello and welcome. I am Thomas Porteous and you're watching the newsroom here on NewsX World. And of course, as always, has been a hugely eventful day here in the newsroom. We've covered a flurry of topics today, from European developments coming out of Munich to ongoing tensions within the Middle East. But we start this hour with a breaking development posted by US President Donald Trump within the last couple of hours. And we're now gearing up for that meeting with Donald Trump's new body, the Board of Peace, on the 19th of February. Donald Trump has just touted the power of that Board of Peace, his controversial Board of Peace, on his social media, claiming that the board has unlimited potential. He's also touted the fact that it was indeed approved by the United Nations Security Council, and has said contentiously that he facilitated humanitarian aid at record speed and secured the release of every living and deceased hostage. What is the talking point here, however, is now we have moved on to the second phase of this fragile peace deal. That includes the disarmament of the militant group Hamas, something which remains the focus of Israel and is going to be seen as quite a difficult task to fulfill. Now, Hamas has responded to this previously and said that it requires a whole lot of clauses that Israel will certainly not be willing to fulfill. So we will, of course, figure that out as soon as we get it. But Hamas, Donald Trump said, must uphold its commitment to full and immediate demilitarization and disarmament. He's saying that the Board of Peace will prove to be the most consequential international body in history, and it is his honor to serve as its chairman, gearing up for that meeting in Washington, D.C., where the likes of Romania and Albania have also confirmed their attendance today. So we'll, of course, continue to bring you that, as well as other countries continue to confirm their appearances in Washington this Thursday at Donald Trump's first Board of Peace meeting in the US Capitol. But now we move on to further escalations in the Middle East. And we're also gearing up for talks in Geneva between the United States and Iran. Now, these talks will be indirect. They are the second round of talks, but many analysts and experts that we've spoken today say that it is indeed still impressive that these two sides are still talking. They are back on the calendar. They're expected to resume negotiations 2 days from now, marking a crucial phase for a nuclear deal after previous sessions have stalled, of course, after the 12-day war with Israel last June. The two sides here remain on very different pages, particularly when it comes to nuclear negotiations. The United States wants the Iranians to completely cessate their nuclear ambitions. The Iranians, of course, maintaining that these nuclear ambitions are indeed friendly. But Iran said it is willing to make concessions if the United States does indeed approve some sort of sanctions relief. However, it is not yet known how far the United States is willing to go in terms of sanctions relief, or even if it is. But of course, all of this happens as a huge US naval build-up remains in the Persian Gulf, as the region remains apprehensive and concerned if the United States will indeed strike. Joining us on this to give us a bit more detail and depth is Meher Karuna. She's going to give us and tell us a bit more about this story and this developing situation between Washington and Tehran. Meher, what can you tell us?
Well, yes, Thomas, tensions have been rising again between US and Iran as both the sides have continued and agreed for diplomatic talks, a second round of talks between both the sides. Well, this time the talks are supposed to take place in Geneva. Earlier they took place in Muscat in Oman, and the talks are scheduled for 17th of February, which is day after tomorrow, in Geneva. And this obviously comes as tensions in the water have continued to rise, with the United States deploying 6 warships with offensive capabilities towards the Iranian waters, and they've signaled a serious escalation in the military pressure. Now this move obviously comes amid the negotiations that are supposed to take place, as well as concerns over Iran's nuclear ambitions. Now these warships, which include powerful vessels capable of launching airstrikes and missile attacks, have been strategically positioned as part of the United States' broader efforts to deter Iran from advancing its nuclear capabilities further. Now US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has reiterated that US President Donald Trump prefers a diplomatic resolution, but he's acknowledged that securing a deal with Iran remains very hard to do. Now, despite these challenges, Rubio has emphasized that the United States is committed to pressuring Iran to curb its nuclear program, with the possibility of military action still on the table if diplomacy fails. Now, meanwhile, Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Majid Takht Ravanchi has responded to this growing pressure, and he's given an interview where he's expressed Iran's willingness to compromise on its nuclear program. Now, this is obviously a change in stance coming from Iran itself, but he's also said that this will only happen if the United States agrees to lift sanctions. Now, he said that the ball is in America's court to prove that they want the deal to happen. Now, the Deputy Foreign Minister has also said that they are ready to discuss Iran's enriched uranium stockpile and other nuclear issues, but he stressed that sanction relief must be a part of the conversation in Geneva. Now, he said that Iran is prepared to consider compromises, including its 60% enriched uranium stockpile, but only if the US addresses this critical issue. Now, on the military front, as I mentioned earlier, the US has increased its military presence, and they have also deployed the USS Gerald R. Ford, which is the world's largest aircraft carrier, and this has obviously joined other US military assets in the region. Now, the US has also increased its air patrols over the region and continue to maintain its naval blockade in the Persian Gulf. And now, as tensions remain high, we are tracking and closely looking at what these talks in Geneva will come out and what updates come out of this conversation. Over to you, Thomas.
Meher, thank you so much for providing that context for us. Do stay with us as we turn over to Europe as we move on. The Munich Security Conference wrapped up today. We saw a lot of developments coming out of that over the past few days. We saw the United States Secretary of State speak, but of course we did see a wartime president address the crowd there in the Bavarian capital. President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed the crowd. He said that new energy and military support packages are and have been agreed with European allies. These are due in the next 10 days by February the 24th, which, on a side note, is a 4-year anniversary of the day that Russia invaded Ukraine. The energy assistance here is aimed at offsetting widespread damage to Ukraine's power infrastructure from the ongoing Russian strikes, including cities like Kyiv facing outages in severe freezing conditions. This appears to be one of the largest coordinated European energy aid efforts yet ahead of the invasion anniversary. Zelensky said the new package includes additional military support with reported emphasis on things like air defense systems, critical as Russian attacks and drone strikes ramp up. Now you may ask why this matters now. The Russian forces, of course, remaining highly active, with Moscow claiming territorial gains in multiple villages in the month of February. Of course, this emphasizing the current battlefield pressure on Kiev. And at the same time, diplomatic posts like Secretary of State Marco Rubio are in the region, working on strategic cooperation with Central European governments, underscoring the tangled geopolitics around these aid and alliances. Marco Rubio actually currently in Slovakia and next heading to Hungary, the two countries which remain the most skeptical when it comes to offering aid to Ukraine. So make of that what you will. The Munich Security Conference, he used the platform to not just tout for fresh aid, but to reinforce that Ukraine sees the war and future peace deals as tied closely to strong Western backing, including long-term security guarantees. This is all gearing up for those third round of trilateral talks, which is happening on the 17th, which is happening, later this week between Russian, American and Ukrainian delegates in the Swiss capital. So a rather eventful week in Geneva this week. Meher Karuna joins us once again. She is going to give us a little bit more background when it comes to the diplomacy that's going on behind the scenes to try and put an end to this conflict. Meher, what have you got for us?
Well, yes, Thomas, and as the strikes are taking place from both the sides, Russia and Ukraine, and there has been no confirmation from either of the sides, our focus right now is on the talks that are taking place in Geneva, the second round of trilateral talks. And earlier these talks took place in Abu Dhabi, but now this location has shifted to Geneva, Switzerland. And Ukrainian President Zelensky, he has made some comments, and he said that the next round of talks he's hoping that there's some updates regarding the matter, and he said that Ukraine has been asked too often to make concessions while Russia has faced far less pressure regarding that matter. And Zelensky has voiced these concerns at the Munich Security Conference, and he stressed that Kiev hopes that the upcoming talks are serious and substantive. And he's also said that they called for tougher sanctions on Russia and increased weapons supplies from Kiev's allies as a means to force Moscow back to the negotiating table with real pressure to end the war. Now, on the backdrop of all of this, these comments is a war that has now entered its fourth year, with talks last held in Abu Dhabi. Those talks were described as constructive on progress, but not delivering any breakthroughs on the sticking points such as the territorial control, and Russia controls to demand that Ukraine cedes the eastern regions, including parts of Donetsk, which is a proposal that Kiev rejects. Now, the US has taken a leading role in shaping the diplomatic process, and they have been acting as a mediator, and Washington has set some expectations, and Trump has said that he's put a deadline, and he expects the war to be end and a peace deal to be signed by the summer. But he's also said, he's also signaled that peace will require hard choices, and according to some officials, a balanced pressure between both Russia and Ukraine. And for Ukraine, the fear is now that a peace deal that asks too much of Kiev without securing concessions from Russia could undermine its sovereignty and future of the region. Now, Zelensky has even suggested that the peace should be tied to legally binding long-term security guarantees for Russia from the United States before any agreement is signed. Now, the United States as United States acts as a mediator between these trilateral talks that are taking place, all eyes are on Geneva, as the trilateral is going to happen on 17th of February, which is day after tomorrow. Over to you, Thomas.
Much, Meher, for providing that insight for us. We now move on and over to a related development. Just over 2 years ago now, we heard of the death of a huge Putin critic, maybe his most prominent, Alexei Navalny, that he died in prison in a Siberian penal colony. However, just yesterday we had the update that European governments, backed by US statements, say the Kremlin used a dart frog toxin to kill opposition leader Alexei Navalny, and the United States is not disrupting that conclusion. In the UK, political updates involved that Yvette Cooper explicitly condemned Russia's Navalny over Navalny's assassination, even amid unrelated domestic politics about activist bans. The Western leaders are tightening this rhetoric. No sign that Moscow cares about the backlash. Alexei Navalny, of course, Russia's most prominent opposition figure, for over a decade, built his profile in exposing these alleged corruption among the Kremlin elites on his YouTube channel and through other platforms. He's the founder of the Anti-Corruption Foundation in Russia, used his YouTube investigations to reach millions and millions of people inside the Russian Federation. He was barred eventually running against Vladimir Putin in presidential elections. He wasn't just a fringe activist, he was the only opposition leader who consistently mobilized large nationwide protests. Vladimir Putin allegedly, and his government allegedly behind the assassination of the opposition leader. Maresha Barb is going to join us now. She's going to give us a bit more insight on that situation.
Well, yes, Tom. Mounting on the already immense pressure and tension that Russia is facing, the controversial death of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny is adding yet another strain on ties with Russia, with the global nations. Now, when you look at it, the most recent update of it all is the fact that the UK and 4 European allies, which are Norway, Sweden, France and Germany, have come together and have issued a joint statement claiming Russia responsible to have murdered Alexei Navalny. Now, the poison that was used, according to what was mentioned in the joint statements, was a toxin made from South American dart frogs before his death in February 2024. Now, the lab results as such have come about with UK's Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper, who confirmed that independent lab tests of biological samples from Navalny's Siberian prison cell found the presence of epibetadine, which is the poison, which is a potent neurotoxin. Now, Cooper stated that only the Russian government had the motive, means and opportunity to poison Navalny while he was imprisoned. Now, when you look at the poison in itself, the toxin that is discovered, epibetadine, is not naturally found in Russia but can be synthetically manufactured. The UK has evidence that Russia possesses this chemical in fact. Now, Cooper has further called the poisoning, as I quote, a barbaric Kremlin plot aimed at silencing a political opponent, showcasing the despicable tools used by the Russian state against its critics. Now, the UK and its European allies have reported Russia to the Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, which is the OPCW, for violating the Chemical Weapon Convention. Now, in the midst of all of this, you see Navalny's wife, Yulia Navalnaya, has come forth and has expressed that the findings confirm her long-standing belief that her husband was in fact murdered. She calls for Russia's President Vladimir Putin to be held accountable for his actions. Now, in the midst of all of this, Russia continually denies these claims. In fact, the Kremlin dismissed the findings as propaganda and claimed Navalny died of natural causes, rejecting the conclusions from UK and its allies. So, This is what we know when it comes to the controversial death of Alexei Navalny, the UK and its allies, and also his wife, who came about and gave her statements. So yes, Tom, this is what we know.
Maresha, thank you so much for bringing us that. We now turn over to South Asia for our next story. In New Delhi, the AI Impact Summit kicks off tomorrow with world delegates and CEOs attending from all around the world, from 100 different countries in fact. It is the first time a major AI summit has been held in the Global South, the focus being on AI for development, governance and global cooperation. Participation from policymakers, tech leaders and international delegates. This strategic objective of this summit is to position India as an AI rule maker, not a rule taker, showcasing India's digital public infrastructure model and to promote ethical AI and global South representation. The reason why this matters in these days now is because AI geopolitics is indeed increasingly competitive. Of course, you look at the likes of the United States and China, the global tech war, and one can only see its importance there. AI geopolitics is increasingly competitive, and India wants to regulate its regulatory influence when it comes to this growing and revolutionary technology. Opportunity for economic growth here for India, and Maresha is going to join us now. Maresha, what more can you tell us about this summit that kicks off tomorrow?
Yes, well, Tom, it is in fact a monumentous event and summit. The AI India Impact Summit of 2026, which is being held in New Delhi, is a monumentous one because it is the first AI summit held at such a scale in the Global South. Now, it is commencing tomorrow from the 16th to the 20th of February 2026 here in Delhi. Now, the core focus of this summit is the three foundational pillars are people, planet, and progress. Now, these pillars guide the discussion and action on AI's role in society. Now, the core framework of this is that the summit will focus on 7 working groups or chakras. From what we know, it embodies human capital, inclusion of social empowerment, safe and trusted AI, science, resilience, innovation and efficiency, democratizing AI resources, AI for economic growth and social good. Now, the key events of this summit will include the AI Impact Expo, which will be part of the summit that is happening, while Prime Minister Modi addresses and CEO roundtables will also be happening notably on the 19th of February. Now, the notable attendees attending these are rather huge, with global leaders, which are 15 to 20 heads of government, will be in attendance. We will be witnessing the tech industry giants like Sundar Pichai, Satya Nadella, Sam Altman, Dario Amodei will also be attending this, and Indian industry leaders such as Mukesh Ambani, Nandan Nilekani, Kiran Mazumdar Shaw will also be in attendance of it. Now, the special initiatives and challenges of this will be AI for all, focusing on large-scale social impact, AI for her, which is highlighting the women-led AI innovation, the UVI, which is a global challenge for young innovators, and India AI Tinkerpreneur, a national bootcamp for school students. So these are the details and the key outcomes that we will be tracking in the coming week from the 16th to the 20th of February. More details will be following on NewsX World as we will be tracking this summit closely.
They certainly will. Thank you so much, Maresha, for joining us here on the broadcast. And of course, that is all that we have time for this hour. Do keep watching NewsX World as we continue to cover all the major events from around the globe. Thank you very much for joining us.